All right, so we're going to talk about how X, formerly known as Twitter, has now turned to Google to sell programmatic ads as it struggles to regain ad dollars. So this piece came from Ad Age. And so it says Twitter goes searching for ad revenue with Google Ads Manager access to online auctions. So what are your initial thoughts as I pull this up?
Well, Twitter used to partner with Bing, and it was April 2023 where they got dropped from Bing, and now it is Google. So, in
Are you sure
essence,
about that?
yeah, I'm sure. It used to be
Okay.
on Bing. I'm like 99.9999% sure. Let me actually Google it.
Yeah, because I'm searching for Bing over here. There's no like history of it. As you search for it, let me just read this real quick. So Google.
Microsoft drops Twitter from its advertising platform.
Okay. All right. Well, Google confirmed today that X would use Google Ad Manager, the programmatic ad platform for publishers, to participate in online auctions to sell its inventory. And so the spokesperson said this: like a number of social apps and websites, X has signed up to monetize its home feed with Google Ad Manager. This is an opportunity for our advertisers to reach a broader audience. But as always, they can choose what sites and apps their ads run on. Any publisher who participates in this type of partnership must abide by our publisher policies.
This is an easy way for them to crank up and just get hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in ad revenue over time because Google has the inventory, and because they have the inventory, they have probably one of the largest advertising networks out there, if not the largest advertising network out there, because they're bigger than Facebook from ad dollars. So if they plug in Twitter, more inventory, advertisers are happy, easier for them to just integrate campaigns that are pretty broad and just push it out on Twitter as well.
Yeah, so I look. There's a sub headline here saying how it's a risky move for Google. I'm going to stop the share, but basically it's saying, hey, like one of the things is programmatic or display inventory rather is generally seen as less valuable, and I've seen that. I think same for you probably, Neil. It's also a risky move because Google has to hold X accountable for its publisher standards. There's a lot of crazy stuff that's published sometimes.
Dude, I don't think it's a risky move from. Dude, check this out. Okay. Yes, even if X, and I'm not saying they will, but let's hypothetically say X breaks some policies and Google gets some heat for it. You think companies are going to stop advertising on Google? No, it drives too much revenue. It drives such a massive ROI. Google's not going to be impacted. It's just like, dude, you remember everyone would be like, oh, let's ban Facebook and not use social media. Well, Facebook's still making a killing on ad revenue. It doesn't matter what people think. At the end of the day, if businesses can generate profit from it, they're going to keep spending in most cases.
Well, as I was saying before Neil interrupted me, risky move. This is an ad age piece say that it's a risky move. I think it's look at the end of the day. We were talking before we did this show that I think this is a good segue for Linda Yaccarino, who was recently appointed as CEO of X, to figure out all the ad issues that they're facing right now. And then this is a nice bridge. And maybe they'll continue doing this long term. And maybe this is just like a long term partnership. But at least this stops the bleeding because I think, Neil, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, last time we saw they were 50% down on their ad revenue.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think it's long term. It's probably a good move for both sides, and I think you call a spade here. I mean, with Elon reducing 85% of staff and shipping a ton more features, I think X is the ship hasn't been righted yet, but I think it's slowly getting there. And so I'm seeing if there's anything else here. Do you want to add any more thoughts as I read this?
I think it's actually going to make X ads more expensive over time because there's going to be more people competing for the inventory.
Oh, okay. Here
So
I
that's
got
from an
this.
advertising perspective.
So here's the sub headline here. So it says X's updated ad sales team. So on Thursday, X announced a restructuring of its ad sales team and new hires. Monique Pintarelli was hired as head of the Americas on X's ad sales team, coming over from 𝗔𝗕𝗢𝗓𝗧, which is an online programmatic and global media platform. X also hired Carrie Stimmel as the new global agency leader. Stimmel has been chief growth officer at NBC Universal. Okay, so there's a lot of hiring, there's a lot of restructuring that's happening right now basically it's just what I said, right? And so I think it's going to take some time to see the fruits of this labor. Anything else, Neil?
Nope. Go try advertising on X. It's still cheaper than it was a year ago, and we're seeing still great ROI from it.
Yeah, I mean, look, Threads launched, and nobody's talking about Threads anymore. We talked about it for like a week or two, and look, at the end of the day, X it still has hundreds of millions of users, and I'm fairly active on reading, and some of the smartest people I know are actively using it. So go use it. I think the attention is underpriced. All right, so we are going to talk about how YouTube creator Deestroying is reshaping the NFL. So Neil, have you heard of this guy before?
I have not.
Okay, let me culture you a little bit. It's not like
All right.
not like I'm super cultured or anything. But let's see this one over here. And do you see my screen? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So this guy Deestroying over here, 5.36 million subs. I think he tried out for the NFL before, maybe didn't make it. But what he does is he basically, like, let's say you're coming from like a small town, like let's say you're coming in from, I don't know, some random LA high school, and you want to try to make it to the NFL, but you weren't given a chance before. So what he'll do is say, hey, like I'll give you $10,000 and you can compete against an NFL player, and if you beat him, you get to keep the $10,000. So it's not I'll give you. It's like it's a contest basically, right? I'm not going to play the full video here, but you can see a lot of these videos here are 15 minutes, 26 minutes or so. He's got again 5.36 million subs. Each video, like this one from 7 months ago, 5.2 million views.
Like, how does he get this done?
Here, let's just watch one real quick.
So he's just like getting NFL players and like knows them, or
yeah, so he's gotten to know them. I think he initially had to reach out to them to start to get to know them. I don't know the entire story, but I think it's helpful if we just watch this real quick. Justin Jefferson? I'm like, okay, so this is interesting. Justin Jefferson's like the #1 wide receiver right now in the NFL, right? He plays for the Vikings, I believe. And so he's masked up. You don't know who he is. And so he's playing one-on-one with everyone. And I think the thing here is if you want to win the 10,000, you have to get the closest to beating him, right? And so my point of showing you all this is to say that this is super interesting. It's entertaining. And the NFL has actually partnered with this guy. I think this guy, again, he was like turned away before. And now he's like building a brand for himself. And so I think guys like this are reshaping the creator economy. And let me give you another story before I get your reaction, Neil. I was hanging out. Do you know the guy Mark Manson?
No.
So he wrote the book Subtle Art of Not Giving a F, and then he wrote Will Smith's book. And so we hung out at the All In conference, right? And he's now all in on YouTube, and he's doing these $10,000 challenges where it's like, if Neil, let's say you didn't have confidence talking to women or something like that, right? He would give you $10,000 to basically go out with him, and he'll help you basically go through all these challenges, and then if you somehow beat the challenge, he'll give you $10,000, right? And so
I'm in. I'll talk to any woman. Just give me the 10 grand. That's a great one.
So yeah, I mean, what's your take on all this? I think this is fascinating.
It is fascinating. I think it's really cool, and it makes it viral too because everyone's like, well, who the heck is this NFL player? I also like the idea of contests, but most contests are boring. It's just like apply and share this, and one lucky person will get 10 grand. Those type of contests and programs are just like played out, but stuff like this is entertaining because it's fun to participate and it's fun to watch.
Dude, what if we help someone get a job at like a enterprise company or like some $1 trillion company or whatever? Like there's some type of challenges I think we should come up with. We can come up with as well. But the point of all this is that the NFL wasn't paying attention to this guy. And then because he got the attention, then the NFL started paying attention. So he did a deal with Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the NFL. And this is basically now a feeder to the NFL or maybe elite college programs, and this guy can basically become like an agent, for example. And so with the attention that he's getting, he can basically become an agency, right?
Yes.
In a sense.
Dude, he can do really well with this. It's a really good business model. I like it.
At the end of the day, like one of the things we're going to talk about in the next 4 episodes or so is the conversation that we had with the CEO of Wistia, Chris Savage, and also Jay Klaus, right? On where we think this stuff is all going. This is a good example. And this is an example of why you should figure out how you can own the attention. And if not, like maybe partner with somebody that's good at it. Like we're not saying you have to be the dancing monkeys. Neil and I, we're the dancing monkeys for our businesses, but you should have at least one dancing monkey.
Dude, and if you can end up doing this stuff, I believe it really puts you on the map, right? Like it gets a lot of people to know who you are, and it gets your brand out there in a really good, positive way.
We are going to talk about Coca-Cola's new marketing formula. So this piece came out from the Wall Street Journal, okay? So here's what the headline says. Those of you that can't see, it says Coca-Cola's CMO on sidestepping the culture wars, navigating AI, and boosting events over ads. And so, I mean, that the lead is kind of in there, but you can see, so they own Diet Coke, Sprite, Powerade, Smart Water, and their brand overall. So it continues to fall. Like overall volume share of the U.S. non-alcoholic beverage market remains below its heights. So in 2013, it was 28.9%. Last year, it was 23.1%. So it's continued to go down, right? But still, everyone knows Coca-Cola. What they're doing is they kind of have a stance that they're not going to get
That's of
involved.
Coca-Cola. That's not of all their products, right?
That's all their products.
That's all the products. So it's actually decreasing quite a bit.
Yeah, that's significant. So 6% on 29% or whatever that ratio is. So for them, look at this. So they avoid the fray over human rights in China, opted out of running Olympic themed displays, and they just don't want to endorse or criticize any particular group, right? And so, a couple months ago we talked about kind of the Budweiser marketing campaign, and we're not going to go too much into it, but at the end of the day, Coca-Cola stays clear of this stuff because they're an international brand. And so they say, look, whatever your political preference is, whatever your religious preference, whatever your sexual preference, we welcome absolutely everyone. But a different thing is to make a statement that basically favors one against the other. It is not our job to enter that. And by the way, before you go into it, like, I think that's how most companies, my personal opinion here, is not Neil's opinion, but most companies should just focus on what their mission is. And if their mission is to help with these causes, then by all means do it. But like when you think about Coinbase, when you think about Shopify, back 2-3 years ago or so, they wrote these memos to their team saying, like, look, we got to focus on our mission. Shopify, our mission is to help, get more people, onboard people into e-commerce. Coinbase mission is to onboard more people into crypto, right? It's not to get distracted with these side quests.
Yeah, and the way I look at it is, as a business, you got to figure out, kind of like what you said, it's your values, your goals, and what they stand by. And assuming you and your team agree to them, whatever they may be, that's what you focus on because that's what, is core to the culture and the company. And sometimes those things will grow your revenue, sometimes they'll hurt you. But if you're staying true to yourself and true to your company and your values, then everything should be okay in the long run, at least from a perspective of being happy and continuing moving forward.
Look, and here's the next part, right? So I think this part's interesting. So Coca-Cola the subheader here is pivoting from Web3 to AI. So Coca-Cola is one of the first major consumer brands to integrate generative AI into its marketing campaigns, and this fully bodied embrace has required the company to place less emphasis on the previous topic du jour, Web3 and the metaverse. So literally a year ago, almost no one was talking about AI, and everyone was talking about the Web3 and metaverse. We even had a major program around metaverse in the works and in plannings, but that we finally decided not to pursue. So what are the lessons here, you think?
Well, they're going where the attention is. And as you can see, no one really cares about the metaverse. And not to talk crap on Facebook, but no one really talks about it.
Yep. I just think it's a timing thing. I think the metaverse or blockchain technology, all that stuff is still relevant for the long term. And so, but I think it's important because Coca-Cola, like, it's a big branding exercise for them. It's important for them to stay relevant. And when you're one of the biggest brands in the world, like, that is what you have to do. And then finally, this part's interesting. So I don't know if you know this, Neil, but they have been decreasing their spend on like traditional TV commercials and been focused more on event marketing. So like a Super Bowl, for example, or maybe like a film festival or something like that. Actually, interesting enough, Neil. So where I live, I can see the golf course where they had the US Open a couple months ago. And when they were setting everything up, I just saw tons and tons and tons of Coca-Cola trucks coming through. In fact, it was probably the most prevalent truck that I've seen, most prevalent brand, I would say.
So I like that, and I like the aspect of experience for Coca-Cola. So, to take it one level deeper, it's not just events, it's about the experience you're creating for people with your brand. Because the thing that Coca-Cola has, and this doesn't work for all companies, they already have amazing brand recognition. Whether the sales are going up or down, everyone in the world, or majority of the people in the world, know what Coca-Cola is. So their focus shouldn't be about getting their name out there. People already know who they are. They're already top of mind. Instead, they should focus on experiences. I think that's what's going to make the brand more memorable, and that's going to want to make people consume more of their products. Now, I do still think it's wise for them to do traditional marketing campaigns, whether it's through digital or offline channels, for their brands that aren't as popular. because Coca-Cola owns a lot of brands, and some of those brands are really massive, like Coke or Dr. Pepper. I don't know if Dr. Pepper's owned by them or Pepsi, but either way, you get the point. Some of those brands are just massive. But on the flip side, they own some brands that only do a few $100 million. I'm guessing here in revenue. They're tiny. Not everyone knows about them, but those products are growing. They're booming. Maybe they're not creating them, but they're buying some of those companies. Those are the ones that they should double down on when it comes to advertising, so they can gobble up more of the market share.
So I'll just end it with this. We actually, I don't think you met this guy, but about a year ago, I went to this event and I met the CEO of a company. I think his first name is Jonathan, maybe, but he runs this company called AnyRoad, and it is the leading experiential marketing platform. And he does a lot of deals with, and I'm pretty sure he works with a lot of soft drink brands, or beverage brands, we should just say. So you can check that out. We're not. I've never used it myself, but that's the thing that comes to mind. So that is it. All right, Neil, do you know the trends with Shopify, Flexport? Like, what do you think the growing trend is with all businesses right now, or a lot of great businesses? What do you think it is?
A, focus. B, cost cutting.
Okay, you're in the right vicinity. Yes to both of those, right? But more than anything, when you look at Flexport, they basically they hired the CEO from Amazon. They hired a CEO who worked at Amazon, and he was a pro with logistics. So Flexport's like a logistics company,
Yeah.
and they ended up sacking the guy recently. And that's just a good example of the chairman, who was one of the founders, Ryan. He stepped back into the company.
Yeah.
And he's back in. He's playing. And he, sorry, he's not playing. Emma's playing, but
My
he's
daughter popped on screen for anyone who can't see.
yeah.
And this podcast.
So Ryan's back in, and so Shopify, like they're focused on. When you look at it, it's like, okay, we're gonna focus on cost cutting. They offloaded their Deliver platform, and I think they gave it to Flexport, and they partnered up with Amazon, and they're just focused on delivering a good e-commerce experience. So my point of saying all this is, like, the focus has led to cost cutting. It has led to the CEOs coming back to operate the businesses, right? It has led to a very low, or almost zero tolerance for BS in a company.
And the reason they're all doing this is they got to hit earnings and numbers. So I totally get why a lot of them are focused this way, and I don't really blame them. At the end of the day, when you're publicly traded, a large organization and really well funded, you got to produce, and production means more revenue and more profit. And if you're not making profit, at least becoming profitable. That's what the market's looking for. Investors, public markets, it doesn't matter. People want growth, and they want growth with profitability. They don't want growth at all costs and no profitability.
Well, and I think the way for everyone to think about this too is interest rates are everything, right? So when interest rates are close to zero, then growth is everything. When interest rates are higher, which most people here aren't used to, including myself, then efficiency is everything. And everything basically revolves around interest rates, because that affects how people spend, and that affects businesses directly.
It affects everything. How many businesses you can buy, the cost, how much you can invest. For example, I was chilling with someone at the airport. I was on my way to Boston for HubSpot's event, and they were telling me how they raised quite a bit of money. They bought over $1 billion worth of companies. This is a big private equity fund, but this guy's the CEO, and they do around $100 million in profit. And each year, almost all their money goes to paying down debt. Like, there's literally no money left over. And when I say all the money going down to pay debt, mainly the interest, not the principal portion. Literally, mainly the interest.
Yep. And so here's the other thing I'll say too is, Neil and I, we have mutual friends that have stepped back into their businesses, right? Some have they have thousands of employees, and unfortunately they've had to cut. And some have been out of the business for a year, 2 years or so, and they're back operating. And it's extremely painful. It's like, you can compare it to like eating glass over a period of time, even though I don't know what that feels like, but it's painful, right? One of our other friends, he was not operating one of his businesses for probably like 3, 4, 5 years or so. He's back in it, right? I'm very much back in it as well.
Dude, I remember. Oh, I know who you're talking about. And I was like, why don't you use the iPad anymore? Because he taught me to use the iPad. It's super efficient. And
Yeah.
then he's like, the business is a mess. I have no choice but to use a laptop now. I can't do enough on the iPad. And I was
Dude,
just
it was
crying.
even better than that. It was something that was shorter, and you said it. I forgot what it was. It's like no, it's like our business is too crappy for me to use an iPad right now.
Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah, yeah. So look, I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's a good thing, right? Like I was talking to my coach yesterday, and I know Neil doesn't like me working with coaches, but like, it's very much a back to basics thing, and that's cool because it forces focus. And for someone like me that likes to dabble in a lot of different things, like it's nice, right? And I think this focus muscle is something that has been very needed for a long time because at the end of the day, if you want to build something really great, you just focus and let it compound for not 10 years, but 20 or 30 years. You're muted.
Well, what everyone should, yeah, because I have kids in the background, but what everyone really should end up doing is doubling down on what's working and cut the fat where you don't need to. I remember sitting with a guy years and years ago. He doesn't know me, but it was at like a group dinner. This is like over 10 years ago. His name was Brian Lee. He co-founded 𝗔𝗕𝗢𝗧 with Kim Kardashian, Honest Company with Jessica Alba, LegalZoom, which was a success for him. And I remember talking to him. He's like, you should have laser focus. But the moment your growth slows down, then start, expanding your focus into other areas. But until then, just continually have laser focus.
All right. So today we're going to talk about why B2B creators are the next big thing. So do you remember what we are talking about at dinner with at Inbound with Chris Savage, the CEO of Wistia, and also Jay Klaus, who's a YouTube, um, let's just say a YouTube creator expert?
Yeah, we were talking about how B2B creators can be massive because there's so many B2B companies with so much money, but there's not enough influencers out there that are in B2B that companies can pay and sponsor.
Yep. So main thing here is we were just like so Chris, as an example, he has a company called Wistia. They do really well. They've been around for 17 years or so. They're a video hosting company. I think Neil and I both use them, and they've been extremely helpful. I'll just leave it at that. And we're just saying that look, we're going to see a growing like a rise in B2B creators because the thing with B2C marketing is that it's usually a couple years ahead of B2B marketing. And obviously we're seeing a lot more creators rise in the B2C case, right? We're seeing a lot of D2C brands partner up with well-known influencers as an example. But for B2B, it's kind of hard to find B2B influencers. And so the argument right now is for Chris as an example, it's like I just need to kind of become the B2B creator. And that's why he's doubling down on his podcast. The reason why Neil and I do this podcast and we've been creating for a long time, Neil started with blogging, is because we see the value of creating content because the goodwill that you build for the long term ends up helping with shorter sales cycles, larger deals as well. And it's just easier to work with someone that way, right? And so like Neil and I see us both as B2B creators. I call us the dancing monkeys. And
But
we
there's
think for a lot
one
more.
issue with B2B creators, dude. Although there's a big market for it, B2B creators for enterprise just doesn't work too well. Like it really doesn't, right? Like if you look at most businesses that are closing enterprise revenue, it's through things like RFPs, outbound sales, SDRs, and the B2B creators are great for getting your brand out, whether it's enterprise or SMB. But from a revenue conversion standpoint, I think B2B creators are super effective for low end and mid market, not effective for enterprise. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it because I think the brand awareness is still good. So that way, when your SDRs or BDRs, whatever you want to call them, start doing outbound stuff, people at least recognize the brand, but it just doesn't close as much revenue for enterprise.
I think the argument here, like, here's what I think we can debate on this, right? I think if you're a strong B2B creator and you have a strong audience, let's look at your audience as an example, right? Or Gary Vee's audience. I think it's a good way to go from 0 to 100 million faster because you know what I mean? But then try to go from 100 million to maybe a billion or so, maybe doesn't help as much. I think it starts to
No,
slow down.
and I don't even know if it's 100 million. I actually think the real honest answer is it helps you go from 0 to 10 million super fast. I think above 10 million, it really slows down on its benefit.
Yeah. So I think also we're still in the very early innings of this. Like this whole creator economy thing is still fairly new. So let's just see how it plays out because, in the next 5 to 10 years or so, if creators become more and more accepted, which I think they will, then this could totally change, right? Because if the growing market for creators, like is more accepted, then it might move from 10 million to 15 million to 20 million or so to 50 million to 100 million, right? Just like when you think about the early days of the NBA, there wasn't a lot of attention there and the players weren't paid as much. But now when you look at players, like the contracts just keep getting bigger, but it's because TV deals are getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah. I also do believe B2B creators are super effective as long as you focus your content around a vertical or a niche. The problem that most people face with B2B content creators is they go too broad and they try to leverage consumer based or B2C based content just so they can get a massive audience. And then it's not effective when they promote a product or a service or talk about one just because their audience is too broad and it's not B2B related.
All right. Well, that is it for today. Let us know if you plan to become a B2B creator. Maybe if you have some good traction, hit us up on Instagram or Twitter, and maybe we'll figure out a way to do something. So that is it for today. Please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. 5 stars, please, and we'll see you tomorrow.